Well, hi, and welcome to another edition of From the Woods Today. We've got our little spooky edition going on. I'm Renee Williams, and I'm here with my co-host, Billy Thomas, and we are so grateful that you're here with us.
Yeah, what a spooky day right before getting ready for Halloween. Now, glad to have you all with us today. We've got several great guests, a reoccurring guest, and a new guest for our show as well. We're going to start off talking about bats. It's National Bat Week here in the United States. And we've got Greg's going to be talking. He's from Copperhead Environmental Consulting down in Central Kentucky. He's going to be talking to us about bats. And then we're going to have Dr. Jonathan Larson, our kind of resident entomologist that we've adopted here in the Department of Forestry and Natural Resources. And he's going to be talking about some of the creepy crawly things that we might see out in the woods. And then we have a really kind of cool tree shrub that Laurie's going to be talking about. It's got a really spooky name. I'll let her kind of introduce that before we get to it. But a great show, and I'll wrap it up with a big upcoming program we have in November. So get your calendars out and you can mark your date on that. So glad to have you all with us. If you're here via Zoom, please use the chat pod. And if you're joining us via Facebook, use the comment section and we'll respond accordingly. But Renee, a very good show today.
Yeah, definitely our Halloween creepy edition. So let's get started with that. Greg, if you'd like to turn your camera on. Welcome to our Halloween edition.
Thank you.
Bats are a big part of Halloween.
Yes, they are. Yep.
So if you could tell us a little bit about what you're going to talk about today, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah. So I'll be discussing mostly our bats here in Kentucky, just a little bit about the species, things they eat, kind of where you can find them, things of that sort. And then I also, since it is National Bat Week and Halloween's just around the corner, I've got a couple slides of some Halloween bat species, what I'll call them. So some that we don't find here, but definitely fit the Halloween stereotype.
There you go.
Wonderful.
Well, thanks for being with us, Greg. Looking forward to your presentation.
Yep. All right, so bats are often associated with Halloween. A lot of people are a little spooked and creeped out by them, but hopefully after this, if you're one of those people, I can show that bats are actually really cool and very important. A lot of you may be aware of the myths about bats. There's many, many of them. One of the most common ones is that they will get caught in your hair. And I guess that comes from the idea that they can be kind of curious. They will sometimes fly low, check things out. They can fly erratically. So people think they get caught in your hair, but in reality, they have no reason to be getting close to your hair, getting caught in your hair. It's not going to be a concern. Another concern, unfortunately, is that all bats have rabies. And a lot of the times when bats get into the news, it's because of there's been a rabid bat found near a house or something of that sort. And sure, bats do carry rabies. A small portion of them do. Most of them do not. But like any mammal, never pick it up or touch it if it is acting strange, because there is that potential. A lot of times people think bats are blind. Maybe that's because, again, of kind of the way they fly. But in fact, bats' eyesight is comparable to that of ours. And then people also will just say that bats are just flying rodents. And they're actually very different from each other. So they're not closely related to rodents at all. So speaking of their flight, their erratic flight, bats are the only mammals that are capable of true flight. You might think of sugar gliders or flying squirrels, which are also mammals, but they glide. They don't actively flap their wings. And bats' wings are made up, their wings are their hands. They have 5 fingers just like ours. And so they flap their wings and are capable of true flight. Only mammals that can do that. There are over 1,200 bat species in the world. So they're very, very diverse, and they comprise up to about 25% of all mammal species worldwide. So they are found all over the place. Not sure why this keeps progressing automatically, but they are found worldwide, very diverse. And this slide just kind of highlights some of that diversity. So all of our bats are insectivores. Most of them are fairly small here in Kentucky. A lot of times people will think of fruit bats like the flying foxes. Those you often see in zoos. They're very large and found in the tropics. This bat over here is the nectar feeding bat that resides in the southwest of the US and into Mexico. So they got these long noses and long tongues to drink nectar. And then, of course, a lot of people are aware of vampire bats. There's none of those here in the US, but they are found in Central and South America. And they will serve as our first Halloween bat species. So there are 3 species of vampire bats. Again, none of them here in the US, so you don't have to worry about them. They do not suck blood like people may think. They create a small incision on their host, which is typically birds or livestock. Very rarely will they feed on people, but given the chance, it's possible. But they create a small incision. They have an anticoagulant in their saliva, so the blood keeps flowing, and they just sit there and keep lapping it up. And I read the other day that vampire bats were actually named after vampires, not the other way around. So that was kind of neat. After the book Dracula came out is when things really got ramped up about, I guess, calling these guys vampire bats and associating bats with vampires. So bats can do a number on the insect population. So I don't know of many people who like mosquitoes, but they can eat about 1,000 mosquito-sized insects in an hour, and they will they can eat their body weight in insects a night. So they're really good to have around. They save the country billions. This slide's a little old, but regardless, they save the country billions of dollars in pest control, particularly for the agriculture industry, but also applies to urban areas as well. Unfortunately, our bat populations are on the decline. Part of that is due to development and loss of habitat, but also white nose syndrome, which is a fungus that was first discovered in New York in 2006. It's a fungus that is native over in Europe, and European bats don't have, they're resistant to it, so it doesn't affect them. When it somehow got over here into the US, our bats had no resistance to it, and this fungus has slowly moved from New York down through the Appalachians and continues to make its way westward, unfortunately decimating many species of bats that were once common are now no longer that common. And this is just a photo of, looks like some little brown bats that have been infected with the disease. So what it does is it grows on their muzzles, on their ears, their wings, their tails, any exposed skin. This fungus will grow, and it causes the bats to wake up more than normal during the winter. They typically will wake up a couple times during the winter to groom and move around, but this fungus causes them to wake up more often and use up their fat and water reserves. And they then leave the caves searching for food and water when there is none during the winter. So they often, unfortunately, die of starvation and or dehydration. One of the aspects of the job that I get to do, it's a small aspect of it, but probably my favorite part of it, is caving and doing population counts. So sometimes we get to rappel into big caves, involves a lot of crawling, ducking around, looking for bats and identifying what species are there, counting them, and looking for any signs of white nose syndrome. These are Raffenest big-eared bats. They will group in tight clusters, and I believe these are Indiana bats, which are federally endangered. They group in tight clusters as well. Here's just some more photos of bats in caves. This lower right photo is of a bunch of gray bats in a cave. They can roost in the hundreds of thousands in caves here in Kentucky and Tennessee. And it's almost kind of like someone took a paintbrush and just splattered the wall and ceiling. So they're just all over the place. And then tricolored bats up here at the top. Those are one of our bats that actually will roost alone in the caves. They're not found very often in multiple groups. And these are more big-eared bats that are clustered together, which are really neat. All right, second Halloween bat species I have is the ghost-faced bat, which is kind of aptly named. It's got a kind of looks like it's out of Star Wars or something. It's got these long, like C-shaped ears that kind of engulf its face. Its nose is kind of smushed up. It's got this really big forehead and these weird, like skin flaps coming off its chin, which I'm not sure exactly what those are for. These guys are found in Mexico and can be found in parts of Texas and New Mexico and Arizona. They're an insectivorous bat as well, but a very odd-looking bat to say the least. All right, so here in Kentucky, we have 15 bat species, which most people don't realize that we even have that many. A lot of times people just think of, we got brown bats, and we do have big brown bats and little brown bats, but Kentucky has a fair bit of diversity. We've got two big-eared bats, the Raffenest and the Virginia big-eared bat. We have like 5 trees, what we call tree bats, and these are bats that roost up in the foliage of trees, kind of look like dead leaves. Those are our hoary bats, silver-haireds, which are only here in the fall and winter. They migrate through. Seminole bats, red bats, and then the little tricolored bat will also roost up there. And then we have 5 or 6 myotis species, and myotis means mouse-eared bats, so maybe that's why people think of them as rodents, but we have several myotis species. The gray bat is federally endangered. The northern long-eared bat is federally threatened. And somewhere on here, I have an Indiana bat, maybe this guy. They're federally endangered as well. Not all these bats are found statewide. Some are only found like the southeastern. Those are kind of found in the southwest part of the state. Virginia big-eared bats are found in the eastern part of the state. Bats live in a variety of habitats. The gray bats, they are cave obligates, so they will roost in caves year-round. They don't use the same cave year-round. They will have a summer cave and then move to a winter cave to hibernate, but they live in the caves year-round, come out at night to forage, typically over streams. A lot of our bats will roost up under the exfoliating bark of dead trees. Some of them roost in human-made structures. Unfortunately, sometimes those are houses or barns. Gray bats will also use bridges. So they're cave obligate, but they will also use bridges, which kind of give that somewhat of a cave feel. So bridges can be used. And then the lazy-urine bats, as I mentioned before, those tree bats, they roost up amongst the leaves in the trees, kind of looking like a dead leaf. This is a red bat that we were tracking during this past summer, and was fortunate enough to actually spot with some binoculars. And they're really neat in that they have furred tails, and so they kind of use that tail as a blanket to stay not so much warm during the summer, but during the winters when they're hibernating. I also really like red bats. Not only are they really pretty and colorful, but they're one of the few bats that are actually sexually dimorphic. So that means the males and the females appear different just by looking at them. And so these are all photos of a male and a female, both caught at the same time. I think this might actually be a photo of Seminole bats, which are also sexually dimorphic. But so with these guys, the red bats, the males are a much brighter red, and the females are a little bit duller, and they have frosted tips on their hair. Their hair has got like white frosting on it, which is kind of neat. But very pretty bats, and kind of unique in that sense that the males and females appear different. Our largest bat we have in Kentucky, and one of the largest in the country, is the hoary bat. It is the most widely spread bat throughout the U.S. Or North America in general, all the way up into Canada, and I believe even down into Mexico. These guys, as you can see in the hand, are fairly large. They have a wingspan of about, can be up to like 16 inches, and they weigh anywhere up to 30 grams, sometimes more when with pregnant females. And just to give you an idea, a large paper clip weighs about a gram. So in the grand scheme of things, they don't weigh a whole lot, but in the bat world, 30 grams is a hefty bat. The smallest bats that we have here in Kentucky is kind of a tie between the tricolored bat here on the left and the eastern small-footed bat. Both these guys weigh only a few grams, 4 to 5 grams, and have wingspans of maybe 8 to 10 inches. So these guys are very tiny in comparison to a hoary bat. A neat thing about bats is that you can tell their age by looking at the joints of their fingers. So this here is a photo of a juvenile bat, and you can see that when you shine light on the backlight, the wing membrane, that their joints are kind of long and they have these gaps in them. They haven't fused together. So the light will shine through those. That's an indication that it is a juvenile bat. As they age, and even by this time of the year, so bats that were born this year, they already are difficult to tell whether they were born this year or they've been around a few years, because their bones have already fused together and the light doesn't shine through them like it does there in the juveniles. So once they become an adult, it's very difficult to get an age just by looking at them. Sometimes if you catch an old one, you can tell that their teeth are kind of worn down, but otherwise they're either juvenile or they are an adult. So the last Halloween bat species I've got for you is the ghost bat. It can range in color from like this sandy color to white, fairly white. So I guess that is where it gets its name. These guys live over in Australia, and they're a fairly large bat. They're a little bit bigger than the hoary bat wingspan wise. I think it was their wings are 20 plus inches, and or close to 20 inches, but they weigh a lot more. And these guys are actually carnivorous. So from what I was reading, they're not too picky either. They'll eat anything from large insects to small mammals to frogs to reptiles. I read that they occasionally will even go after other bats. So these guys could be, I guess, a little scary if you are one of those other animals, because they have quite the array of a diet. And then lastly, if you're interested in more batty things, Copperhead has produced 2 documentaries. They're both about 15 to 20 minutes long, roughly. We've produced these over the past several years. If you just type into Google spring migration of the Indiana bat or home for endangered bats, those are documentaries highlighting some of the research that we have done as a company over the years. And so with that, I'm ready to take questions.
All right. Thank you so much for that presentation. I know one time we heard something thump in our kitchen, and next thing I know, there was a bat flying around in our house, and we have no idea how it got in, but we opened both the front and the back door, and somehow it knew how to fly out. But we noticed when, sometimes you see them out, that the bats, they seem to fly like they're out of control and that kind of thing. So why do they do that?
Part of it is because they're trying to track down insects using their echolocation. So the insect is trying not to get eaten. So it's doing all of its evasive maneuvers, but also bats utilize their tail and their wings to eat. And so when they catch up to an insect, they will either scoop it up in their tail or use their wings as a hand to push that food into their mouth. And so a lot of times when they look like they're, out of control, it's likely that they are putting food in their mouth, ducking, forward and pulling that bug out of their tail membrane to eat it. So that's why they're often looking like they're
multitaskers.
Yes, they're very good at it.
Oh, Greg, you know so much about bats, and so many of us know so little. It was fascinating to me to find 15 different species of bats here. I mean, so yeah, I mean, in our backyard, I mean, talk about, here, like in the urban area, what type of bats, we're likely to kind of encounter there.
Yep. In the urban areas, big brown bats are certainly the most common. Those are the ones that people most often will find in an attic or in a barn. Little brown bats will do that also. They're just not quite as common, unfortunately, due to white nose syndrome. And then also eastern red bats. You won't find them in your house. Likely, but they are very much a habitat generalist, and so you'll often see them flying around the lights, the city lights, getting bugs.
Yeah, I know I see them in our backyard all the time. I'm just curious about, well, which ones are those? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, probably one of those 3 likely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, bats get a bad rap, but they really are so helpful. I mean, people just, I think it goes along with like snakes and stuff. There's just like an inherent fear, but they really do so much good for us.
They do. Yep. They're, really, really important to have around. I try to tell people that, everybody loves birds because they're pretty and all this and that. And, some of our bats, like the hoary bat is, I think, very pretty. But the bats essentially are serving the same role as birds, just at night. Mm-hmm. Eating insects. We don't have any pollinator bats here, but in the western parts of the country and in other parts of the world, they're important pollinators, just like birds are, and seed dispersers. Insect.
Wow.
Very interesting.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, great stuff. Really appreciate you sharing that. And what a fitting time to share this during National Bat Week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on.
Yes. Yep. Thank you. And a thanks to Copperhead Environmental Consulting for freeing you up for the day to speak with us. We appreciate it very much.
Anytime.
Thank you, Greg.
So moving on to our tree of the week, and Lori has got a kind of a creepy tree, I think.
I know, at least the name is creepy, and wait till you see it, Lord.
Yes, it is kind of appropriate for Halloween. It is Devil's Walking Stick, also known as Hercules Club, and some of you may be familiar with this. It's a small tree, sometimes shrub, that we find throughout Kentucky except for the inner bluegrass. So it's known for those. It's got viciously spined trunks and stems, so definitely not a tree you want to grab when you're out in the woods. So I thought it was suggested to me last year. I had done Kentucky coffee tree because it kind of looks like the poltergeist tree in the silhouette, and somebody suggested Devil's Walking Stick as the next Halloween tree. So here is Devil's Walking Stick.
I'm Laurie Thomas with the University of Kentucky Forestry and Natural Resources Extension, and I'm here with the tree of the week, the Devil's Walking Stick. Aurelia spinosa is a deciduous tree or sometimes shrub that has several unique characteristics. It is in the Aureliaceae family or ginseng family. It is also called Hercules club, prickly ash, or angelica tree. It's known for its viciously sharp, spiny trunks and stems. Devil's walking stick is a small tree or shrub that grows up to 30 feet tall and tends to have a small, flat top. Trees generally grow in clusters and often form clonal thickets by sprouting from the roots. It has been used as a unique ornamental in landscape plantings, and the flowers and fruit provide nectar and food for a variety of insects and wildlife. Devil's walking stick is native primarily to the southeastern half of the United States, but it does reach up into New York and Pennsylvania. It is found throughout Kentucky, except in the inner bluegrass. Devil's walking stick is found in upland and lowland woods and prefers moist soils and is commonly found at edges of streams, and it is classified as shade intolerant. The very large deciduous leaves are alternately arranged on the stem, and they are doubly or triply compound in form. They can be up to 5 feet long with many 2 to 4 inch leaflets. The leaflets have serrated margins and are green or blue-green and above and pale below. The leaf base or petiole is swollen and is often prickly. Fall leaf color is bronze red with some occasional yellow. Devil's walking stick is monoecious, meaning one house, or that a tree has both male and female flowers. The flowers are in large clusters and they are small and creamy white. The flower clusters or panicles are about 12 to 18 inches and occur at the ends of the branches. The flowers bloom in late summer, usually July through August, and are aromatic, having a lemony scent. The flowers are pollinated by a variety of insects, including bees and butterflies. The fruit is a round, fleshy drupe that's about 1/4 inch long. The fruit is in large pink-red clusters that ripen to purple or black, and the fruit ripens in early fall. The aromatic seeds are eaten and dispersed by a variety of birds and mammals, and the seeds will germinate the following spring. Trees begin producing fruit between 4 and 5 years of age. The bark is gray-brown with thorns that persist for some time. The bark becomes shallowly furrowed with age. Devil's walking stick is a moderately important tree for wildlife within its range. The abundant flowers provide nectar for many bees and butterflies, and the fruit is eaten by a variety of birds, including eastern towhee, cardinal, white-throated sparrow, wood thrush, and the cedar waxwing. Small mammals, including possum, raccoon, and gray fox, consume the fruit, as well as black bear. Devil's walking stick was introduced into cultivation around 1688 and is still occasionally grown for its uniqueness. It has decorative foliage, prickly stems, large showy flower clusters, and distinctive fall color, and it does reasonably well in urban settings. In addition, it's an attractant for pollinators and fruit-eating wildlife. In the Victorian era, it was planted as a grotesque ornamental. The national champion Devil's walking stick as of 2021 is in Baltimore, Maryland. It's 31 inches in circumference, 28 feet tall, with a 24-foot crown spread. The Kentucky champion Devil's walking stick is in Jefferson County at Jefferson Memorial Forest. It's 13 inches in circumference, 26 feet tall, with a 10-foot crown spread. If you'd like to know more about champion trees, check out American Forest Champion Trees or check out Kentucky Division of Forestry Champion Trees. Now for a few fun facts about Devil's walking stick. The common names, Devil's walking stick and Hercules club, is due to the sharp thorns all along the stems and the branches, and the name prickly ash is due to the vague similarity of the large compound leaves. It is said to have the largest compound leaves in North America. Devil's walking stick was admired by the Iroquois because of its medicinal usefulness, and early American settlers also used the plant for medicinal purposes, including its alleged properties of curing toothaches. It's also been reported that handling the roots and the bark can cause skin irritation in some people. I hope you get the opportunity to get out into your woodland, a local park, or neighborhood and enjoy the beautiful Kentucky trees, including the very unique Devil's walking stick.
Well, thank you very much, Lori, for doing that for us. You know, the leaves and everything else on that is beautiful, but those thorns,
I know.
they're
And it's like, yeah, I know. You're like, wow, this is a lovely. Oh my heavens,
Right.
what is that on there?
Right, exactly. Because when you first had it, I was like, well, there's nothing wrong with that tree. And I was like, whoa, no, let's not put that in our yard.
Yeah, which I guess is I thought it was pretty. I didn't know that about the it being grown as a grotesque ornamental in Victorian gardens, and so that was kind of cool, and it does fit that.
So where can you see an example of this tree?
Well, if you don't, like I said, if you live outside the inner bluegrass, you might be able to find it out in a natural area somewhere. They tend to grow in groups. As we talked about with those clonal rhizomes, you'll be able to find them in small groups. Or you can go to, I know Bernheim Arboretum has some. I don't know that they have any in their actual collection, but I know they have it out in the woods off the Bent Twig Trail. And you can come to, if you're on campus, come to the UK Arboretum, and along the longest loop down Tate's Creek Road, there's a group of them down there that have been planted. So, which is where some of these photos actually came from.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for joining us again
Sure.
today.
Yeah. Hey, Laurie, before you go, real quick. So it's a toothache cure, right? I was curious about that. Is it because they just grab the thorns and they think about their hand hurting and it goes away, or what?
No, the tree does have medicinal, the roots, the bark have medicinal properties that Native Americans used. Early American settlers used those as well. There's some debate whether it was actually this plant that was used as the toothache tree or not. That's why I said it's been supposed. So
Sure.
yeah, but it does. And most of our trees and plants do have some medicinal properties with them. And this is just one that obviously it attracted, early settlers and Native Americans because of its look and trying to figure out how can it help them. So
Yeah.
You ever wondered how that got to be about? It's like, how do you look at that tree and go, I wonder. It looks like it would cause a toothache more than kill it.
I know.
Yeah.
Thank you, Laurie. I love the segments. Yeah, they're always great. Yeah.
All right.
Keeping our theme of kind of creepiness going. Not that Laurie's was creepy, but the tree itself, right? And the bats. But now we've got our resident entomologist here from UK. Yeah. So Jonathan, we've adopted you. Yeah.
Oh, you're on mute. There you go.
I appreciate being adopted. Yeah, that's nice. I was wondering where you were going with the creepy thing. If you were going to imply I'm creepy.
No, not at all. No, not at all.
I did want to share. I did an extension program a couple of weeks ago in Mason County, and somebody came up to me afterwards, and they were like, "I know you from somewhere," and it was from the woods today. They were like, "You're the bug guy that shows up." I was like, "This is awesome! Yeah, absolutely, yes. I'm the bug guy that shows up." So, hi out there if you're watching.
We do that occasionally too. They're like, "How do we know?" Especially if Billy and I are together. Like, how do we know you? Are like,
but Jonathan, thanks for being with us again. You always bring such great knowledge and such interesting things that a lot of us kind of overlook. So I'm excited to have you.
Well, yeah, I'm excited to talk about some bugs. I do have some creepy things. I didn't have all the creepy things that I wanted. We have an insectarium in the entomology department, also known as kind of our outreach lab. It is run by Blake Newton, our extension outreach specialist. He tends to all of the critters that live in there. He is a very good arthropod tender. I would say he has a chitin thumb or an exoskeleton thumb instead of a green thumb. He keeps them all alive and happy. And so I borrowed some of his critters here today just to show off some things that you could find in the woods. And I have a bug cam as well. It's just my cell phone. So I'm going to start a video from it so we can kind of go in.
Awesome.
Going up over there. Okay.
Yep. That's
so in this container, we have
drop off
an interesting little friend. This is a wheel bug. If we look down closely, can you see on the top there how it gets its name, this kind of cog shape that shows up on its pronotum? This is an assassin bug. So it's part of a large group of insects that all have piercing, sucking mouth parts. They use these in the assassin bug group to feed on other insects. For the most part, the true bugs, when they have these needle mouth parts, they're feeding on plants. So things like aphids and cicadas and scales have a slightly different type of life, but the assassin bugs have adapted to use it for feeding on other bugs. So wheel bugs are actually pretty interesting. They'll feed on just about anything that's smaller than them. I've seen them eat things like caterpillars, other wheel bugs. I've even seen them grab and drink the juices right out of Japanese beetles. So they're pretty popular for that biocontrol purpose. They can deliver a nasty bite to us as well if they're mishandled. So that's why I'm keeping my hands and fingers away from the insect and just kind of filming it for you. That beak is quite pointy. It jabs in, they deliver a saliva-like substance into the skin, and you can sometimes get a little divot in your skin after that. So if you see one, kind of appreciate it from afar, but recognize that it is a predator and it will stab you if it gets the opportunity. But I think they're pretty wonderful. They are something that creeps folks out, and they get confused a lot with the cone noses, the blood-sucking cone noses that we have in the state, also known as kissing bugs. These are not kissing bugs, so that's one of the sub-creepy factors of them, is some people think that they are out to drink our blood like a vampire. But these ones, all they want to do is eat bugs. And then we got some fungi growing in here for Ellen as well. I don't really know what that's all about. But that's just one of the ones I brought with me here into my office today. So I'll put the lid back on her. Find a safe spot to hide that out in. We've got some things in the lab that aren't from Kentucky. One of the ones that I wanted to show off, this is our desert blonde tarantula. So when you see a tarantula in captivity, a lot of the ones that we see are the rose hair tarantulas. Those are the most common ones you find in the store. But these Arizona blondes you can find in some spots. I think you can see how they get their name. They have that kind of nice blonde coloration on the cephalothorax there in the center. And then they have the sort of, it looks like leg warmers on the brown hair. They've got this kind of blonde color there. If we look closely, we can see the tarantula's eyes as well. Tarantulas don't have very good vision. They use all of these hairs to be able to sense the wind moving around them. This one is also probably sensing perhaps my body heat. That's why it's moving closer to me. I'm going to choose to believe that it understands it can't eat me, but it is sort of sensing me, and maybe the camera as well. So we have an Arizona blonde. We used to have a couple of others. We had a curly hair tarantula. Of course, we don't have tarantulas in Kentucky, but we do have one of their close relatives. If you go out in the woods, you will frequently find what we call trapdoor spiders. They are another set of primitive spiders that live in our state. As the name implies, they build a trapdoor out of silk and sometimes wooden materials or out of dirt that they're sort of living around. And they'll use that to create a cover to a hole. And when something walks over that hole, they will pop out and grab it and pull it in and bite it. When we talk about these primitive spiders, the reason they're primitive is the way that their fangs are set up. So if we look at the blonde tarantula, we can see her fangs up here in the front and how they point downward. So the more primitive a spider is, the more downward pointing those fangs are. A more modern spider would have chelicera or fangs that are kind of opposing one another instead. So this one, you can kind of see that highlighted there on her face. I'm trying to get a good angle for you. But those trapdoor spiders, they exhibit that as well. We have 2 or 3 of these brought into the entomology department every year. We try to keep them in the lab, but they just never do very well. Sometimes things just aren't meant to be pets. So those ones we don't get to keep very often, but we did have one brought in earlier this year. It was quite cute, I thought. Maybe some other people would disagree with me, but so that's not one that we'd find in Kentucky, but I did want to show some spiders that are present in the state that some folks might call creepy. In this little vial, we have a barn spider. Barn spiders are pretty common around the state. They often build their orb webs in and around lighted up areas so they can catch the things that are attracted to the lights. In this vial, we have a Dolomedes fishing spider. Fishing spiders are some of the largest spiders we have in the state. They can be as big as 4 inches wide with their legs included. So they have large striped legs. They are found near water in a lot of situations. So creeks and streams and ponds, they will nab anything that lives around there. But we actually get a lot of them brought to us. People find them on their garage door. So imagine a spider about 5 inches wide, just hanging out on your garage door. You can see why people might want to bring it into us. This is a tiger wolf spider. They get their name from the orange stripe that runs down their head. So it's a dead spider. It's been dead for a long time. Some of these specimens that I'm showing you here today, the collection date is, I think the 2 spiders in the vials there were from 1966. So you can see that they would be a little faded after that amount of time in the alcohol. But this one has also been around in our collection for a while. But that stripe down the head, that tells you that it's a tiger wolf spider in life. That would be bright orange. Wolf spiders have really big front eyes. And then underneath those big eyes, they have kind of a frowny face of smaller eyes that look like somebody going like, I'm so sad, I'm sad. That helps to separate them from other things like recluses and other species that people are concerned with. I love the wolf spiders. I think they're a very fascinating group, but of course, some folks don't like it when they try to get into your house, which is usually more of an indicator that you have crickets or something else in your home. Then finally, one of the big bad spiders that we have in the state. I'm going to take the lid off because I want to show you a good view of it. We get a lot of black widows brought to us here in the entomology department as well. So here is a large female black widow. When we talk about spiders, of course, people are concerned about being bitten. All spiders have venom, but not all venom is hazardous to us. But the ones that we do worry about include the black widow and the brown recluse spider. Black widows, we worry about them because they have what we call a neurotoxin. If you're bitten, it will impact your central nervous system. I've talked to a couple of people who were bitten by black widows. One of them, I met him when I was in Nebraska. I was at a Kansas pesticide training meeting, and he was talking about when he was bitten by a widow on a job. And the way that he described it was very painful initially. It eventually developed into a set of flu-like symptoms. So he got very sweaty, he got cramps. He said that he ended up with a fever and he kind of hallucinated a little bit, but it wasn't lethal. So people have this fear that if a widow gets you, you'll die. I think if I remember the records correctly, there's only one confirmed fatality from a black widow bite in the history of the United States. And I think that was from out west. But they're not going to kill you. It's not necessarily a pleasant experience, though. So the female, she's large, she's black, she has that red hourglass on her abdomen. I don't have a male in this container, but male black widows look a lot different. They're smaller, they're kind of striped. Instead of having this solid black coloration, they're kind of a yellow and brown striped color. And they will venture into female webs in order to mate with her. They get their name the black widow because a lot of people assume that the female always eats the male. That isn't always the case. Sometimes she is hungry and she'll snack on him. Sometimes she gets confused and thinks that he's a grasshopper or a cricket that's gotten caught in her web. Other times, once they're finished mating, she'll eat him because it sort of helps to ensure that her eggs will survive. But it doesn't always happen. And the male is able to sort of pluck on the strings of her web in order to gain entry and hopefully not be feasted on. But she's been living in here for a little while. This is one of our newer acquisitions in the lab. We have a couple of widows that we've had at least for a year, maybe even almost 2 years. And we've had a couple of egg sacs with them, one of which hatched recently. A grad student borrowed the widow to go to an event on campus, and they hatched while they were sitting on her desk, and she panicked a little bit. She was a little worried about if she was going to be taking black widows home with her. But these are found out in the wooded areas. They're also found in urban areas. I know when I weed gardens, sometimes I come up and find these sitting in their cobweb, just hanging around outside. I know when we talk about these things, we talk about Halloween and creepy and everything. It's important to point out, as scary as this is, as weird as this is, it is an important piece of the machine of nature, and they help us to control lots of different things. We heard about bats helping us to control mosquitoes and other pests. The same is true for all these weird, creepy crawlies that I'm talking about here today. I know when we try to convince people that bugs are okay, we show off butterflies and moths, but I think it's important to point out that centipedes and spiders and things like scorpions included in that group are important as well. Just because they're not cuddly doesn't mean they don't have a role to play. So one of the things I really wanted to show off today was this little fella. This is a southern devil scorpion, also sometimes known as the Kentucky scorpion. Kentucky scorpions are found in a lot of the wooded areas. I know that we often get them from Berea. That seems to be where people bring them to us from pretty commonly. And we have some folks that actually go out and hunt for them for us and bring them to us. Scorpions have a fearsome reputation. People are always worried about that stinger at the tip of the tail. By and large, scorpions are pretty harmless to people. There's 25 species, I think, globally that are of concern to humans. That doesn't include our little southern devil here, just for a size comparison. I'll put my finger next to it, and you can see she's pretty tiny, not a very large and in charge scorpion. They live under bark, they live under logs, they catch things as they go. Scorpions are interesting because of the way that their body plan is set up. So as an arachnid, they have 8 legs, 4 on each side. They are separated from the other arachnids by having that stinger at the tip of their tail, and also by the claws in the front. The claws are not actually legs, they're a part of their mouth. Those are their chelicera. Chelicera are sometimes fangs, but other times they take on this sort of scissor-like appearance or holder-like appearance. And so they use those to grab onto prey items and move them closer to their mouth. We do have other scorpions in the lab. We have a giant forest scorpion, which is from Asia. We have had in the past Arizona flat rock scorpions, but I'm always very fond of the Kentucky scorpion, just because people don't assume that we have those here. They think that we're a scorpion-free state, but we do have this little handsome brown fella that kind of hangs out in our forests. So if you're out and about looking around under logs and stuff, don't be surprised if you encounter one of these, and just put the log back, say hello, and say, okay, good luck, happy hunting, and go look for other things in the woods. So that's the last one of the arachnids I wanted to show off today. So we've had widows, we've had scorpions. Last thing I kind of want to talk about are some mantids. I have a large photo that we keep in the lab of a mantid. Isn't that a face that only a mother could love there? I think mantids are amazing. Some people find them kind of creepy. I think that we can focus in on the eyes. That's kind of what sets people off. I will share, my greatest childhood fear was being abducted by aliens. And I was always afraid they were going to suck me up into their spaceship because of a late night movie I watched with my grandpa when I was too young. And when you look at the face of a mantis, it is very alien-like. It has that kind of, it looks like the classic conception of an alien, that weird shaped head, big bulging eyes. The other thing that captivates us about mantids often are those pseudopupils, those black dots that appear in the eyes as they look at us. So they don't actually have pupils as we stare down their complex system of multi-eyes. So they have multiple lenses that are on here. And when we look down the lenses, we don't get the reflection of color that we do with the others. And so it looks like they have this pupil and they're able to watch us. I was shopping for a mantis mask for today, but unfortunately it wouldn't get here with Amazon Prime in time. But I did bring one with me. We've had about 4 mantids over the course of the summer in the lab. And this one is, hang on, I'm going to set you down for 1 second. This one is the last one that's left. The others, they're annual species. They don't last all winter long. And when they sort of run out of time, they just run out of time. And this is the last of the ones that we've collected this year. The other 3 have passed away recently. I want to get the lid off of here without spooking it too much. There she is. Kind of hanging out here on the top. Beautiful green coloration, right? Almost ghost-like in appearance. If we can get her to, she's probably going to nail me with those front legs. They have those raptorial legs in the front that they use to grab onto their food items. There's one right there. See it popped out. So those have backward facing spines on each side of the femur and tibia. As they collapse that, it's going to be a lot like a bear trap. And whatever is caught in there is not going to be able to get out very easily. They use these on crickets. They use it on cockroaches, anything that's smaller than them, basically. They'll even use it on each other if they get the opportunity. When they're first born, they will eat their siblings pretty frequently. If you're looking at the video right now, you can see that pseudopupil. Just look at her, watch us. Just trying to figure out what's going on. A lot of insects don't have great vision, but these ones do because they're such mighty predators. They need to have pretty acute eyesight in order to catch the things that are in front of them. So she's trying to figure out what's going on. She doesn't understand that she's right now a viral video star on From the Woods Today, but hopefully she gets her residual checks from YouTube or something in the future. Oh yeah. There's those eyeballs. Fascinating creatures, a little bit creepy, I would argue, just because of the way that they do hunt. Some people are afraid they're going to snatch up their hummingbirds and things like that. They are mostly feeding on insects, but they can catch vertebrates occasionally. There's a pretty famous video from National Geographic of one catching a snake in the rainforest and taking a few bites out of it before the snake wriggles free. So those are the living creatures I brought with me today. I was also hoping to hear if there was any questions about creepy things from the woods, but everybody can say bye to old Matilda, the mantis here, and I'll turn off the bug cam and we can talk about some of the more bugs and creepy crawlies that are out there.
Well, that was amazing, Jonathan. I love that. That was really awesome. I used to think that the hourglass on the back of a black widow meant your time was up.
Yeah, I like that.
Is what I used to think, but
I could see that for sure.
No, that's not necessarily correct.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a lethal thing. It's not a pleasant thing. I mean, I'm not here to tell you to go out and pick up a widow and be like, yeah, this is going to be fun. This is going to be a great experience. It's definitely something to be cautious around, but the lethality is over exaggerated. The same thing is true with the brown recluse. We have several of those in the lab as well, but they're not a forest citizen, so I didn't bring them with me here. But people have this fear that they will die if they're bitten by a brown recluse. It's, again, not a very pleasant experience. When we're bitten by them, we can have an experience called loxocelism, which sounds almost like where lupinism, I think is the way that goes if you read Harry Potter. But loxocelism is where you sort of get this rotten area from the initial bite. And when that happens, sometimes we get a secondary infection, often MRSA and things like that, and it spreads and it can cause the skin to sort of fall apart. Their venom is called a necrotoxin, which is sort of a broad term for spider venom. But you can look up photos of that if you would like over your lunch break.
I have a question. Is praying mantis the same? And I'm not quite sure if you could.
Praying mantis, I was saying mantid and mantis, so I go back and forth between those. Mantid is just it's something we use in entomology more often to talk about mantises. So mantid is kind of a plural. It's also used to describe the group that they're all a part of, the mantis group. Mantids are an interesting one. If you look at, there's kind of a complex of evolution where we would talk about cockroaches, mantids, and termites. They're all sort of similarly related. If you look at it sort of in a complex clade or phylogenetically, I've got friends that are phylogeneticists and they've tried to explain it to me, but essentially termites are social cockroaches and mantids are predatory cockroaches. They kind of have a similar background evolutionarily speaking.
Jonathan, it's always great to have you on here. You introduce us to stuff we don't really see that closely that often, but also just as a general reminder that they do a lot of good things for us. I appreciate you bringing that out. Yeah. That they shouldn't be squashed just because we see them, right?
Yeah, we have a very anthropocentric view of the world, right? We think about, how does this benefit me? I think a tiger wolf spider doesn't have to benefit us necessarily. It does, but it doesn't owe us anything. And it's just important to recognize that they're out there living, doing their thing. And maybe they're not cuddly. I would like an 8-armed hug if I could get it from a spider personally. But I know that for some people, that's a step too far, perhaps. But if you leave them alone, they're not going to bother you. Spiders are not these heat-seeking missiles that want to bite people. They have no interest in us. They know they can't eat us. It's just an accident when those kinds of things happen. So live and let live. Let them walk by. Don't pick them up. Teach your kids about what spiders are the ones to avoid the most, but also teach them appreciation for these things. That's why I love shows like yours, because it's all about remembering that nature is here and it can be enjoyed without getting any sort of capitalistic gain from it.
Excellent. Yeah. Great, Jonathan. Again, really appreciate you and hope you have a happy Halloween. I'm sure you will. I mean, I can imagine there's a lot of kind of stuff going on at your place for Halloween. I'm picturing it right now.
I appreciate it. Happy Halloween to you as well.
All right. We'll have you back. Thanks again. Saying goodbye to our resident, entomologist here. So, Renee, we covered a lot of kind of creepy-ish topics.
Creepy-ish talk, yes. We tried to get the Halloween theme, which I tried to, with this show, to make it so that you might have a little different viewpoint on what's creepy in our woods. Yeah, after hearing that about the bats and all the bugs, and they're beneficial and they all have their place.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we often get with Halloween is something sweet, right? Some nice treats, right, with Halloween. And I wanted to tell the folks about an upcoming program we have coming up in November. I'll go ahead and share that right now. So coming up in November, we are going to be having a Kentucky Maple School. And this Maple School is going to be taking place on November 6th. And this was originally scheduled to be a in-person event, but due to COVID concerns, we have moved it to online. So in some ways that's better because we think it'll be more accessible. It was scheduled for Whitesburg, Kentucky on November 6th. So we are doing it online now. So you can check us out at our little events page. I'll drop that into the events calendar or into our chat pod here in a second, but you can sign up for that and you'll get the Zoom link for that. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is we do have a lineup of shows coming up in November from the Woods Today. We're going to start off on the first Wednesday in November talking about the 5 W's of woodland management. And then the following week, we have Dr. Ellen Crocker going to be covering some invasive plants. And then we've got to try a special tribute on 11/17, kind of our Thanksgiving show, if you will, about how thankful we are and all the reasons we have to be thankful for our trees, woodlands, and those that are engaged with those here in Kentucky. So make sure you join us each Wednesday at 11 for From the Woods Today.
Definitely. And we are going that Thanksgiving, the day before Thanksgiving, we're not going to have a show just because it's really busy that day for a lot of people.
Yeah, so make sure you have your turkey out and thawed by Wednesday. Okay?
Exactly. So we greatly appreciate you joining us. We couldn't do this show without you all. And we appreciate you coming, and you can check out fromthewoodstoday.com at any time and see any of our show topics. And you can even suggest things to us.
That's right. There's a little survey link on there that they can use. And, we'd love to hear from you all and let us know what you'd like to see on a future episode of From the Woods Today.
Yeah. And you can please like us on Facebook so you'll get our notifications, and we greatly appreciate it. And if there's any questions that you have, just let us know.
Yeah, we'd love to work with you in the future on something. So
exactly. Until then, take care, and we'll see you next Wednesday at 11. Bye.
Bye, everyone.